All of Me, a tale of healing and heartbreak, written by Emma Lascaux and narrated today by Heather Marshall. Charlotte stood in front of her canvas, staring at the blank surface before her. She had been painting for as long as she could remember, but lately her inspiration had run dry. She felt lost and alone, unable to find the spark that had driven her art for so many years. It had been months since she had last created anything of substance, and she was beginning to fear that she would never be able to paint again. Ethan had always been successful, but lately he had found himself feeling increasingly empty. He had everything that money could buy, but he couldn't shake the sense that something was missing from his life. He had tried to fill the void with work and parties, but nothing seemed to bring him the fulfilment he craved. When Charlotte and Ethan met, they were both in a place of longing and confusion. Charlotte was struggling with the loss of her mother, who had passed away a year earlier. She had always been her mother's confidant and best friend, but the pain of losing her had left a void in her life that she couldn't seem to fill. Ethan, on the other hand, was struggling with loneliness and a sense of purposelessness. He had been married once, but the relationship had ended in a bitter betrayal, leaving him with scars that had yet to fully heal. At first, Charlotte and Ethan were wary of each other. They had both been hurt before, and the thought of opening up to someone new was terrifying. But as they spent more time together, they began to realise that they had more in common than they had ever imagined. Charlotte found herself drawn to Ethan's quiet strength and the way he seemed to understand her pain without needing to say a word. Ethan was captivated by Charlotte's talent and the way she saw beauty in the world, even in the midst of her own pain. As they talked and shared their stories, they began to see that they could be the key to each other's healing. Charlotte found that when she was with Ethan, she was able to let go of some of her pain and find joy in the present moment. Ethan found that when he was with Charlotte, he was able to see the world through her eyes and rediscover the beauty that he thought was lost. But their journey was far from easy. Charlotte's grief was a deep and complex thing, and there were times when it threatened to overwhelm her. Ethan's scars from his past were still raw, and there were moments when he feared that he would never be able to love again. Yet, through it all, they remained committed to each other, even when the world seemed to conspire against them. They weathered unexpected challenges and navigated their way through painful truths, always holding on to the hope that their love would be enough to see them through. In the end, their love proved to be stronger than anything that life could throw at them. Charlotte found a renewed sense of purpose in her art, and Ethan discovered that love was the missing piece that had been absent from his life. They had both come to realise that love was not about perfection or the absence of pain, but rather about accepting each other's imperfections and finding beauty in the midst of the struggle. As they stood together, looking out at the world, they knew that they had found something truly special. They had found a love that would sustain them through the ups and downs of life, a love that would endure even when the world seemed intent on tearing them apart. Their journey had been long and difficult, but in the end, it had been worth it. For Charlotte and Ethan, the love that they had found in each other was all that mattered, and they knew that they would cherish it for the rest of their days. However, what they didn't know was that their love was about to take a dark turn. One evening, Charlotte and Ethan were enjoying a quiet dinner at home when Charlotte suddenly had a seizure. Ethan immediately called for an ambulance and she was rushed to the hospital. After numerous tests, the doctors found a tumour in Charlotte's brain. They told Ethan that it was inoperable and that Charlotte's condition would continue to deteriorate. Ethan was devastated, and he spent all his time caring for Charlotte and trying to make her as comfortable as possible. As Charlotte's condition worsened, her behaviour became increasingly erratic. She started talking about her art in strange, almost obsessive terms, and would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night to paint. Ethan was concerned, but he thought it was just a way for her to cope with the pain. But then, one day, Ethan discovered something that would change everything. He stumbled upon a hidden room in their house that was filled with Charlotte's paintings. They were all disturbing, twisted works that seemed to be a reflection of her deteriorating mental state. In the centre of the room was a painting of Ethan, with his eyes scratched out. Ethan was shocked and horrified. He realised that Charlotte's obsession with her art had taken a dark turn, and that she was no longer the person he had fallen in love with. He tried to talk to her about it, but she refused to listen, insisting that her art was the only thing that mattered. As Charlotte's condition continued to worsen, Ethan knew that he had to do something. He couldn't stand by and watch as she destroyed herself. He tried to convince her to stop painting, but she wouldn't listen. Eventually, he took matters into his own hands and destroyed all of her paintings. Charlotte was furious. She accused him of not understanding her art and of destroying the only thing that brought her joy. Their relationship deteriorated rapidly, and they became strangers living under the same roof. In the end, Charlotte's condition deteriorated to the point where she was bedridden and unable to communicate. Ethan was consumed with guilt and regret, wishing that he had done something differently. He sat by her side day and night, holding her hand and praying for a miracle. But the miracle never came. Charlotte passed away, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts and his regrets. He realised that he had loved her so much, and that he had been blind to the warning signs of her obsession with her art. He wondered if he could have done something differently, if he could have saved her from herself. As Ethan sat in their empty house, surrounded by the remnants of Charlotte's obsession, he realised that love was not always enough. Sometimes the things that we love can consume us, and it's up to us to recognise when it's time to let go. Ethan vowed never to let another love consume him the way that Charlotte's art had consumed her, and always to be vigilant for the signs of obsession.